Imagine planting trees with your bare hands, watching them grow year after year, becoming part of your family and your soul, only to wake up one morning and find them all gone. Cut down, destroyed, ripped away not by nature, but by the very people who were supposed to protect your neighborhood. That's exactly what happened to me. The HOA said my trees blocked the lake view for others, but they didn't just take my trees. They tried to take my peace, my home, and my dignity. What they didn't expect, though, was that their greed would lead to me owning their land and standing victorious in court, $1.4 million richer. But the road to that moment was anything but easy. The morning was quiet, the way I liked it. My property sat at the edge of a private lake community, a piece of land I had saved for years to buy. My late wife and I planted 10 oak trees together on the slope near the waterline. They weren't just trees to me. They were memories of her laughter, her love for shade, her way of saying, "This land is ours now." But when the HOA board changed leadership, trouble began. The new president, Karen Matthews, made it clear she wanted a more open view of the lake. Every time I attended a community meeting, I'd hear whispers about my trees blocking the water from the hilltop homes. I dismissed it at first. After all, my land was mine. My trees were mine. And no contract I signed said they could decide my landscaping. But one morning, I heard chainsaws. The sound was sharp, ripping the silence apart. I ran outside, and my heart dropped. Workers hired by the HOA were cutting down the oaks. The air smelled of fresh wood and gasoline. Limbs fell like broken bones. "Stop. What are you doing?" I shouted, my voice cracking with desperation. The foreman shrugged. "Orders from the HOA. Says you're in violation. These have to go." I tried to stand in front of the last tree, but 2 HOA members, flanked by security, shoved papers in my face. A landscape violation order, claiming my trees violated community rules. But I knew it was a lie. No such clause existed in the original agreement. By the time the sun set, all 10 trees were gone. I sat on the stump of the largest one, running my hand over the fresh rings, tears stinging my eyes. My wife's memory had been cut down in an afternoon. The worst part? A smug smile on Karen's face as she drove past in her golf cart, sipping wine like it was a celebration. That night, I didn't sleep. Grief twisted into anger, and anger into resolve. They thought I'd just accept it. They thought I was powerless. But I wasn't. I gathered every document I had, land deeds, HOA contracts, even old newsletters, and took them to an attorney. His name was Daniel Cruz, a sharp but calm man who had fought against HOAs before. After listening to my story, he leaned back and said, "They've overstepped. This isn't just destruction of property, it's trespassing, abuse of power, and emotional damages. If you're ready for a long fight, we'll make them pay." And so, the war began. The HOA hit back quickly. Suddenly, I was receiving fines in the mail, $100 for leaving my trash can out too long, $250 for grass too high, $500 for a supposed parking violation when my truck sat in my own driveway. It was harassment, pure and simple, designed to crush me before I could take them to court. The trial stretched on for months. Every day I walked into that courtroom felt like carrying a boulder on my back. The HOA tried everything. They brought fake witnesses claiming my trees dropped branches that endangered children. They even tried to argue my oaks were invasive despite them being native. But Daniel dismantled them piece by piece. He showed photos of my trees standing tall and healthy. He presented testimony from an arborist who confirmed they posed no danger. He exposed the HOA's misuse of funds to pay for the tree removal crew. As weeks turned into months, the weight of it all nearly broke me. The stress kept me up at night. Bills piled up. I nearly sold my truck to cover legal costs. But every time doubt crept in, I remembered my wife planting those trees with her bare hands. She deserved justice. Finally, the day of judgment came. The courtroom was packed with neighbors, curious and divided. Some were rooting for the HOA, but many had quietly grown tired of their bullying ways. I stood at the table, hands trembling, as the judge read the decision. After reviewing the evidence, this court finds that the HOA acted outside the scope of its authority, trespassed onto private property, and caused significant emotional and financial damages to the plaintiff. The court awards damages in the amount of $1.4 million. Gasps filled the room. Karen's face went pale, her smugness gone in an instant. But the judge wasn't finished. Furthermore, due to unpaid legal fees and the association's misuse of funds, the HOA will be required to sell common property holdings, including the land parcel adjacent to the plaintiff's home, to cover the judgment. I couldn't breathe. Not only had I won, I now owned the very land they had once lorded over me with arrogance. Walking out of that courtroom, the sun felt warmer than it had in years. Neighbors clapped me on the back, whispering, "You did it." Even those who had once stayed silent looked me in the eyes with respect. Weeks later, I stood on that newly purchased land, overlooking the lake. The stumps where my oaks once stood still scarred the earth, but beside them, I planted new saplings. Stronger, taller breeds that would one day stretch toward the sky again. As I watered the soil, I whispered, "We're home, love. They'll never take this from us again." The HOA had tried to destroy me. Instead, they destroyed themselves. And me. I didn't just win money. I won peace. Sparkle's moral of the story: never underestimate the strength of someone fighting for what they love. Greed may cut down trees, but it can never cut down roots of determination. Neighbors began avoiding me. Some whispered that I should just let it go, that fighting the HOA was impossible. But every time I looked at the stumps in my yard, I knew I couldn't stop. The first hearing was brutal. Their lawyer, a slick man with a polished smile, painted me as a bitter old man who refused to follow community standards. He called my trees an obstruction to shared enjoyment. But when Daniel stood up, he brought out the original community contract. He pointed directly at the clause, "The association shall not interfere with the landscaping of private property unless safety hazards are proven." There were no hazards. Just greed. The judge looked at the HOA president, then back at me. "This will move to trial," she said. My heart pounded with hope. But that was just the beginning.